Hi, everyone. It is Anna here from Little Winks. I am so pumped to talk to one of my favorite people here who I wish I lived next door to, but provinces, we're next door. Are we? No, we're not. Anyway, so I was like, nope, nope. Okay. Hey, I passed my citizenship for Canada. So I knew what the provinces were then. I got 90%. So it's all good. Now I've apparently lost all Canadian trivia apart from who came up with the fur trade. Anyway, so, okay. Anyway, guys, welcome here. Today I am talking to Karlie Hudon, who is an SLP. Now she'll explain what that is, and I am so excited because I have learned so much from people. Like, this is one of those women where you're just like, I'm just gonna from osmosis soak up everything she knows. Like, can I creep you and just follow you all day long? She's one of those people. So Karlie, welcome here. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do. Yeah.
Hey, hi everyone. So my name is Karlie Hudon. I am a speech language pathologist. I'm based out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I have been an SLP for just about 10 years. It'll be 10 years this June, and did my schooling down in Houston, Texas, moved back home just a few years ago, and have been working in primarily pediatric neonatal feeding and swallowing pretty much for my whole career. A few little years dispersed in the schools and in adult stuff, but I've always kind of just come back to this area of peds feeding. So when it comes to speech language pathology and feeding, a lot of people wonder, well, why? What does an SLP, a speech pathologist, have to do with that? Speech pathology has a very wide scope of practice, and one of those areas is feeding and swallowing. So we are kind of one of the experts in looking at how babies feed when it comes to breastfeeding, bottle feeding, tube feeding, all the different kinds of feeding that babies can have. And we look at safety, we look at function, and we look at just the overall impact that feeding is having on the relationship that they have with their caregivers, because sometimes that can be a little bit of a rocky road at times. So I have just really found my passion in working with moms and babies and little ones who are struggling with that feeding relationship, and specifically with breast and bottle feeding. I do some private practice stuff. I work in the acute care system in the hospital, and I just absolutely love what I do every single day. So I am super excited to be here to chat with you guys.
I am so glad that you can hear your passion. And then you also have a group of parents that you're kind of prepping for parenthood.
Yeah.
So
I like to help people prepare just because of the fact that we never know what to expect. And so that was one of the things that was really important to me, was to be able to really reach families and parents before their baby even arrives, so that we can hopefully help avoid some of those issues that might come up, or some of those insecurities or worries that parents end up experiencing. So yeah, I do a whole array of things, right from prenatal through the postpartum stage.
I just love that you've got that big picture in mind, right? It's not just this one thing. So
Yeah.
let's one of the things that you've said to me in the past that's really resonated is to know what is abnormal when it comes to feeding is to know what is normal. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little?
So there's so much misinformation out there, and not even always misinformation, but just conflicting information depending on which professional you go to. So your lactation consultant, your doctor, your SLP, everybody has differences in what they think is normal. And because of that, some people will throw up red flags at things that really aren't concerning, and they might brush off things that are actually concerning. So it's just really important to have a good grasp on what is typical and appropriate for your baby when they are feeding, not just what is common, right? Because there's a whole lot of abnormal that is common, but it doesn't make it normal.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about what is like some common things, or not common, sorry, normal, or like what is like expected, or when someone comes to you and is like, okay, this is happening, and you're like, yeah, that I'm not concerned about that. Like,
Okay.
what are some like typical things that you would hear?
Okay. So oftentimes we will hear that baby is on the breast all the time, or baby is constantly feeding. Yes. Initially, baby might be constantly feeding. Just
Mhm.
because your baby is on the breast every hour and a half in those early days to weeks, doesn't mean that you have low milk supply. It doesn't mean that your baby is starving. It means that
Mhm.
your baby is meeting that biological need that they have to suck, and they're helping to build your milk supply. They start
Mm.
with this teeny tiny little tummy that can only take so much. So it only makes sense that they start with these really frequent feeds, and gradually as they get older, as your milk supply kind of finds its good balance as to what baby actually needs, and as their tummy grows, that those feeds start to kind of spread apart and maybe become a little less frequent and a little bigger each time. But I will often have parents come to me saying, my baby's starving. I need to supplement with formula. My doctor told me that this is worrisome, but there's no other red flags, right? So
Right. Like
cluster
babies
feeding,
gaining weight and
yeah, cluster feeding and feeding frequently, especially in those early days to weeks to like 3 month kind of mark, is normal. It's
because that's
totally
when they're
normal.
like establishing that breathe, suck,
Mm.
swallow pattern, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're learning how to do it all, and it takes practice. And practice on both ends, practice on your end and practice on baby's end and practice on your partner's end to figure out where the heck they fit in with all of this, right? So um, it's totally normal and it's not something to freak out about. If you're ever told that that's an issue, get a second opinion. Go to a lactation consultant or to an
Mhm.
SLP and get their advice as to whether or not they think that there's an underlying reason that your baby's doing that other than what's biologically expected and typical. Right?
Yeah. I've had a lot of moms who are like concerned and like will weigh their babies every day.
Mhm.
How often would you weigh a baby every day, like to
Hmm.
see like weight gain? Because like obviously some days like there's a lot of extra poop and other days there's not. And
Yeah.
like some days it's extra milk and
Yeah. So it's not suggested unless your baby, say your baby was a preemie, or say that your
Right.
baby has been struggling with weight gain. They haven't made it back to their birth weight by that like 2-ish week mark or a little bit sooner.
Mhm.
Um, if there are concerns and red flags and signs of like dehydration, that type of thing, or you've got really big issues with your milk supply or suspected issues, then your doctor or a dietitian might be involved at that point and might suggest to do weights before you feed baby and after you feed baby to get a good idea as to how much milk they're getting from you. Um, and then potentially doing a weight every few days or once a week. But when it comes to a typically developing baby who is healthy, who is showing no signs of concern, um, I generally just suggest to leave it up to your doctor's appointments. So you go for your 1 week check, your 2 week check, usually. Most provinces and states, from what I've understood, do a 1 week and a 2 week. And then usually it's not until 4 or 6 weeks. And then it's three
Mhm.
months, 6 months. So you're not checking your baby's weight all the time,
Yeah,
because you'll get in your head about it. There are
totally.
like, it's crazy. There are fluctuations literally throughout the day. There are fluctuations day to day. And what you're looking for from a dietitian's perspective, of course, I'm not a dietitian, so I don't focus on the weight part of things, but I work closely with them. And what they always say is you're looking for a general trend that is moving up and following
Mhm.
their curve. If you
Right. It's
focus
all
on,
about their curve.
yeah, if you focus on the day to day, you are going to drive yourself absolutely crazy and anxious because you're going to see your baby here one day and here the next day, and then way up here the following day. So
Yeah.
the general trend is what you want to see. And their
And like
curve, not the average curve or the 99th percentile curve, their curve.
yeah, and like there's research showing that like babies and children will literally like be stagnant in growth and then grow overnight, like in a 48-hour period.
Yeah.
Just
That's
so
usually
it
how growth spurts happen, is it's literally that they'll be short one night and tall the next day, right? Or skinny and then chunky, or vice versa. If they grow tall, they look skinnier the next day. It's pretty nuts. Babies' bodies,
oh
because
yeah.
they're so small, you see the difference when the growth spurt actually happens.
Oh yeah. My 1-year-old just grew over an inch in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Like
Ouch.
between
That hurts
Christmas
the
and
bones.
yeah, like she just like whew, I like looked at her, I was like,
Yeah.
what went on? And I had measured them in like Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And then I measured them like on like January 4th. And I was like, what the heck happened?
Yeah. It's pretty
So
crazy.
because like in the midst of all of this like weight gain and this learning to feed and cluster feeding, milk supplies are being established, and that takes a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, so every mom is going to be different. If your plan is to breastfeed, so either put baby to breast or offer express breast milk in a bottle or another means like finger feeding or SNS or whatever, um, it can take time. But the most important part is that you provide that stimulation to your breasts in those early days so that that milk can come in as quickly as possible. And then you use baby to help establish it and to help your body figure out how much you actually need to produce. So
Mm.
some moms will not get the opportunity to put baby to breast early, or they might have had like a traumatic birth or a cesarean section, something traumatic that happened afterwards that kept them apart from baby for an extended period. Those mamas, we want to try to support them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's helping them with some hand expression or some pumping, right? So that they get that
Mhm.
golden hour or those first kind of few hours of some stimulation to help their brain know we need milk.
Baby's
Um,
here, like bring it
yeah,
on.
yeah. And they don't get those signals all the time if baby's not going to breast, right?
Yeah.
So if you get the chance to put baby to breast right away, and that's what your goal is, that is what will really help it come in. And sometimes it can take a while. Some moms, it comes in day 3. Other moms, it comes in like closer to day 10 to 12, right? So you have to know kind of what to look for and how to support baby to make sure that they're getting their hydration and their nutrition if you are a little bit later to have that milk come in. And it takes a while to regulate. Some moms will have an oversupply just from baby not being able to fully pull the milk out, or because they're feeding so much, or because they're pumping early on. Others will have an undersupply. And so it can regulate between like 6 to 8 weeks. But for oversupply, it can take like 5, 6 months sometimes for it to really find its like place of
Yeah.
exactly
No,
what your
I
baby
was
needs.
in yeah, like I was in complete oversupply until 4 months, both kids.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
and then it was like, and then it felt like this massive drop.
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
get scared that you're not making enough because everything feels different. And then you start to panic and weigh your baby every day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And for my kids, like for my second, I knew that that was coming, but we had like with my first, a big part of that was she had a tongue tie and she had abnormal feeding, and
Yeah.
I didn't know it. Like we were just like leaking everywhere,
Yeah.
like this clicking sound. She could not drain my breasts for the life of her. Like,
Yeah.
and so it was a really interesting journey. She had her tongue tie resolved at like revised, do they call it, I guess,
Yeah.
at 6 months, and then my second was at 4 days. So it was a very different journey because I knew what was normal and what wasn't with that
Yeah.
specific area. I
Yeah.
actually had a mom ask me a question last night, a client last night, and I was like, I'm going to ask Callie about this in the morning. She said that both her kids, when the baby was first born, she had absolutely no milk. And so the nurse just gave her straight up formula, and she wasn't comfortable with that. However, her milk took like a long time to come in, which you're saying that's normal, right?
It can
For a
be. Yeah.
mom. Yeah. So, like, how do you manage it when your milk's coming in late and, yeah, baby's here and we need to feed baby?
So, you have to kind of look at why is your milk coming in late, right? So if you are at risk of low supply, I think it's important to have that investigated first off so that you can see am I going to be able to produce enough milk? Do I need to get into the mindset that it might not be a reality for me to exclusively be able to provide breast milk for my baby? Because a lot of moms put blame on themselves and give up entirely and decide, you know what, if I can't do it the whole way, then I'm not going to do it. I'm failing my baby. So I think the first part is having you look into what might be going on with your body and why that's happening, so that you can potentially get a little bit of understanding, I guess, right?
Like knowledge is power in those situations,
Yeah,
right?
it is. And then as far as it goes with baby, so babies need nutrition. Sometimes babies can literally make it to like 7-10 days with nothing but the colostrum that's coming out, right? Some babies can. Some moms produce a lot of colostrum. And if baby's at the breast all the time, they might do fine, as long as there's no risks of jaundice, blood sugar issues, dehydration. As long as they're having those poops and pees like they need to, then there's not a concern, right? It doesn't matter if your milk's in at day 10, as long as your baby's nourished and hydrated. But if you are early on, not day one is a pretty much jump in the gun with doing formula, especially if you don't want it. If you want it, beautiful, do it when you want to. Okay.
Yes.
But day one's pretty much jump in the gun, because most moms, like no moms, have their milk come in on day one. Like that's not really much of a thing. Usually it's like day 3, sometimes day 2, but not often. So if your milk hasn't come in and there's concerns with baby, so if you're starting to see that they are having some jaundice, if you're seeing that they're more fatigued, that they are not very alert at any point in time, you're just really seeing this tired baby who seems like they are not getting what they need, that is when you might need to do some supplementation. You can add in some pumping or some hand expression to try to get those signals to your body to make the milk, and use that colostrum, if you can get some, to do some spoon feeding, to do some little mini cup sips, to do SNS at the breast, to offer a bottle. Introducing a bottle early on does not negatively impact breastfeeding if you do it the right way with the right bottle, and continue to offer baby the breast so that they can develop that practice and build that breastfeeding relationship. So there's a ton of options and things you can do, but supplementing with formula or your expressed colostrum is something that you just might need to do, so that your baby has the energy to then build that skill on the breast. They don't have
because
energy,
breastfeeding's
they can't feed.
tiring. Like feeding in itself is tiring for a baby.
Yeah. And their wake periods are so short. Like in those first few days, they're like barely awake ever. And so your window is short, right? To have active feeding where you're actually building up those skills, right? A lot of it is very sleepy feeding in the early days, but you want some alertness. And if they're not getting the nutrition they need, their alertness and their drive is just not going to be there, because they're dehydrated probably, right? So you have to make sure that they get what they need. And if that means supplementing, then you have to, but it's not in all cases.
And like bottle feeding is not a bad thing. Like I found there was a lot of beautiful things about bottle feeding when I switched to bottles. Like I had like, and with my first, I had this like mindset that like breastfeeding was this like amazing thing, and this connection was going to go when I switched to bottles, and it didn't. And there was so many beautiful things about it. And I was still able to claim that time as mine with my baby if I wanted to. Like there's no shame in choosing bottles or breastfeeding.
No, there's zero shame in it. And it's literally just a transition in the manner that you're feeding the baby. It is not negatively impacting the feeding relationship in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes it actually makes the feeding relationship better, because if breastfeeding is not going smoothly and you are literally either in pain because maybe your baby has a tongue tie or a lip tie, or you are constantly anxious about your low supply and baby's weight gain, if you are always feeling negatively about the experience, baby knows that, right? And it's not something that you're literally feeding your baby for like thousands of hours in that first year, thousands of hours. And you want it to be something that you can both enjoy because it's a very important bonding experience. So if the best thing for you is to offer a bottle with breast milk or with formula so that you can enjoy that experience and build that relationship positively, then that's the best possible decision that you can make.
I love it. So what are some red flags when a mom needs to reach out for help, or a parent who's feeding baby needs to reach out for help, or that's like abnormal?
Yeah. So from a speech pathology perspective, like I said, we look at like function, and safety is the other part of that. And sometimes those go hand in hand. Dysfunction equals
Okay.
safety issues. Sometimes they're totally separate from one another and there's no safety risks. But the things that we look at, especially earlier on, are, is your baby constantly, and I mean like constantly at the breast? You're not hearing lots of swallows. They don't have the
Mm,
drive and the energy to feed. That's a big red flag, right? And
okay.
that's not to be confused with me saying that cluster feeding is completely normal, because it is, but it's, you don't want baby at the breast not getting milk, just sucking and working hard, but not hearing those swallows and actually getting
Mhm.
something, right? So it's a red
Yeah.
flag when you don't hear those swallows and you have constant feeding. Um, it is a red flag when it comes to any type of congestion. If you are hearing nasal congestion,
Okay.
if you are hearing chest congestion, that's the big one. That is not normal. That is when you
Okay.
are potentially at risk, or baby's potentially at risk of aspiration. And if we have congestion and funny vocal quality, gurgly, wet sounds coming from this area, that's an SLP consult. That is
Okay.
concerning. Okay. Um, Coughing, choking, all of those types of things. Sometimes it's just the milk letdown that baby's overwhelmed by, and doing positional changes or little modifications can help.
Mhm.
But if those little tiny changes don't help, usually under the guidance of an LC, then FLP consult, because there's risk of
Yeah.
something going on, a discoordination in the swallow or something funny that's putting baby again at risk. Um, we're looking at things like really prolonged feed times. So a bottle or the breast taking like 45 minutes, 40 to 60
Mm.
minutes or longer. We hear of parents having to feed constantly for these long periods, and then feeding again like 30 minutes later for that long time again. That's a sign
Ooh.
of inefficiency, right? And babe
Mm.
should be more efficient than that, especially the older that they get. Um, Things like clicking on the bottle. So you're hearing this
Oh
tongue
yeah.
coming
I've
out
got videos of
constantly.
my daughter doing that. Hmm.
Yeah, you hear the clicking. You are hearing like smacking with the lips. You see lip blisters that are, or sometimes it'll look like whitish kind of lipstick on like the inner part of the top and
Mm.
bottom lip. And then it kind of disappears, but it shows up right during and after feeds. Excessive gassiness, symptoms of reflux,
Mm.
um, torticollis or major body tension. Those are all kind of signs of potential tongue ties and symptoms you might see in baby. Um, and then when it comes to tongue ties for mom, you might have undersupply, or your milk is late to come in. You might have major engorgement because baby can't physically empty you because they don't have the ability to, because of their tongue dysfunction. You might have pain, so significant discomfort when baby latches and throughout, blistering, cracking, redness, recurrent clogged
Not
ducts,
normal.
mastitis. There are so many things that are red flags for oral dysfunction. And it's not always
Wow.
an oral tie. It might just be dysfunction that we can address
Yeah.
through different exercises. But a lot of the time it is ties. And sometimes those flags aren't showing up early on because your milk is there for baby and baby's not having to work for it. So you don't see the pain, you don't feel all of those other things happening and hear the clicking. But when they get to like 2, 3 months, you start to see them fall apart because now your
Mm.
milk supply is regulating some and they have to do the work. And that's when the symptoms really can show up for some babies. So it's not always that you have to see these red flags on day one, it can be that you don't see them until month 2 or 3. But that's why I usually suggest knowing what to look for, right? I have a checklist that I have on my Instagram and on my website. KarlieHudon.com is my website.
Great. We can, and that's
there,
like Karlie, Karlie.
Yeah, and then
Hudon.
Yeah, .com. So I have a checklist on there. It's literally called the Red Flags for Feeding Referrals Checklist, so that nobody gets confused. And
I love it. It's clear. Yeah, that's what I always like.
There's a list
stressed, you're sleep deprived, you need it like just laid out.
Yes. It's very simple. So there's a list of red flags that you see from a safety perspective, and then red flags that you see from a potential oral dysfunction or oral tie perspective, so that parents can go through that with their physician and say, you know what, like, I think there is an issue. Can I get a referral? Lots of SLPs don't need physicians referrals. I don't. So you can come directly to me. In most provinces in Canada, you don't need a referral for an SLP, from what I understand. You can self-refer. So if you're having issues, you can go. Or you go to your LC, who can then refer you on, because it's not within their scope to diagnose ties. But they are often pretty good at identifying when breastfeeding's not normal, right? And sending you on to the person who can then identify it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of knowing what to look for, and then keeping an eye on that, even if it doesn't happen on day 1, but watching for those things as baby grows and gets bigger, because preparation is like the key to being able to then advocate for your baby, because you know that something's not right. And now you have a list to go off of that tells you that it's probably not right.
And like, that's what I love about your group, because I teach the sleep class, right, for that. And I love it. It's always fun. But like that, you know, you're looking at these before baby comes, so you're kind of able to process the information, so that when you're in the heat of that moment, when the hormones are raging, baby's crying, you and your partner are able to look back and be like, okay, here is what we want to do and how we're able to advocate, and here are our feeding goals. Do you know what I mean? Like, before it all gets like super complicated. Because like for me, those hormones are just like raging after babies.
Yeah, I know. And that was the biggest part for me in my own journey, was that I knew what to expect. So when I saw all of these red flags, I was able to advocate, but I had girlfriends and family who had zero clue what to expect, right? And patients at the hospital who had no clue what to expect, and their baby lands themselves in hospital because dehydration or whatever, because they didn't know the red flags to look for. And so I just felt like preparing for it is so important. And if your feeding journey goes perfectly, cool. You're good, right? It never hurt anybody to have knowledge. It's just that you have to have it as a just in case. It makes life a lot easier, because then you know, okay, this ain't right. Here's the steps that I need to take in order to hopefully get this figured out and improved, so that we can make our journey positive from here on out, right?
And like when it comes to sleep, we're always saying like we need to establish feeding before we consider sleep, because hungry babies will not sleep. Like it doesn't matter what I do. Like that feeding relationship, whatever that looks like, we need to make sure that baby's getting the nourishment that they do need.
And like for the program that I do, so I launched my program when, like, not even a year ago, almost a year ago. I've ran a few dozen people through it, and the biggest part with my program is that I'm not just like breastfeeding, all about breastfeeding. I am bottle feeding, breastfeeding, solids. I do everything, and I feel like parents should know how to have all of those things in line, because if breastfeeding doesn't go as planned, then what do? You haven't prepared. You don't know what the options are. You don't know what the indication is to then introduce the bottle, or what bottle to do, or how to do the bottle, so that you can hopefully improve breastfeeding, right? So for my program, it's different than a lot of other people's programs out there, simply because of the fact that it's breast, bottle, pumping, an entire unit on like problem solving. So what do you do with nursing strikes? What happens when your baby's
Mm.
teething? How do you identify thrush, low supply, oversupply, tongue ties? And that unit can be pretty overwhelming because there's like a whole bunch of, there's many things
What
that can
ifs?
happen. What ifs? But if you don't use it, at least you knew it, right? And you
Or
knew
maybe
what to
there's
do.
going to be another mom that does have it, and you're like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm able to help you with that.
exactly. And that's where a lot of my private clients have come from, is from the moms in my group who then had friends who were having the issues, right? Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, in the program, like I get you to come on. I get a doula, so a labor and delivery kind of expert to come on. I get a pelvic floor physio to come on. We do group chats every couple of weeks in the 6-week program where parents have access to learn all of this information, because it's not just about feeding your baby. Sleep is the other like huge activity that your baby engages in all the time.
And
And
needs.
yeah. And for me, it felt important to do like a very well-rounded prep for postpartum. I call it the prepped parent, because I want parents to feel prepared for what to expect in all of these different areas. And I'm
Mm.
not an expert in any of those things. So I get the people that I trust to come on and talk with these parents. And the feedback
Mm.
has been incredible when it comes to that, especially with the sleep stuff. I know that I've
Yes.
I've had several moms in the group who have either purchased your course or who have actually signed up. I know that one of them has Amber as her sleep consultant.
Amber's
And
amazing. I love her.
and sleep improved with the help of Amber following baby's tongue tie release. So it was like a combination of all the things from that program that made this baby eventually be able to thrive, right? So it's a
And that mom,
really cool thing.
yeah, because then it's like for the mom, it reduces that anxiety because she has tools to
Yeah,
be like, okay, I'm seeing red flags.
yeah,
Here are people I can trust. Let's put them together. I'm going to not have a million opinions out in the
yeah,
world because, like, you get on Instagram or you get on anywhere, like, you Google that and you're just like, okay, I need to have some people I trust who are like, there's evidence, there's
yeah,
reason, and it
yeah.
makes a world of a difference. And like, and as well as for the partners because they know what's going on.
Yeah, the partners come on to these calls that we do, and they're sitting watching the lessons, because the lessons are all self-study, so moms can watch them on their own time. And the dads are always watching, and often it's the dads who have more of the questions than the moms. They're always the
Yeah.
ones that are like, what about this? What about this? How do I do this? What's the biggest mistake I need to avoid? And it's cool to see that, because parents want to know what to expect. And it's great that they have that option to do so, right? From somebody that they can trust.
Yeah. So where can everyone find you?
So I am on Instagram. So it is at karliehudon.slp. I go on there and I do lots of question and answer boxes and stuff. So anything feeding related, I'm able to answer your questions on there and give some good informational posts. I have my website, so www.karliehudon.com. There are multiple options on there for booking consultations and whatnot, but there's also information on there that is free. I've got a bunch of different free resources on there. One of them being a guide to help you prepare for postpartum, not from a feeding perspective, but just from I'm a mom perspective, and I wish I had prepared in these ways.
Mm.
So that's a really cool thing you can find on there. And you can also access information about my program on that website. There's a self-study version of it, as well as the live version that I do several times a year. And you can always just reach out to me by email if you have questions, or if you are in, I don't know, Guatemala and you need somebody to provide you with feeding support and you don't even know where to start. I will do my very best to help you find somebody. I just helped somebody in Irving, Texas yesterday find an
That's
SLP to help
awesome.
them. So I am very dedicated to making sure that parents feel supported. And no matter where you are, if I can't help you, I will find somebody that will. So email me anytime.
Thank you so much for all of your information and sharing. I really, really appreciate it. And I know it's helped me in my parenting journey and so many of our clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you have Nurturing Newborn Sleep, there's actually a class in there by Karlie that you're able to watch. It's a really great class and it will really help you through those things as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will chat to you too soon. And go follow her. Go check this out.
Go follow. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me, Anna. I love talking to
no
you.
worries.
Okay, bye-bye, guys.
Have people in your life been telling you you'll never sleep again? Are you starting to stress about how life is going to change with a baby or adding an additional baby? I've been there. And mama, it's time to cheers your new best friend, Little Wink Sleep. Our Nurturing Newborns program gently and gradually lays the foundation for sleep in a way that you're able to manage and understand. We use a science-based approach that fosters healthy attachment. You'll be able to let go of the stress of newborn sleep and enjoy this stage, knowing your baby is set up with the right skills. Nurturing Newborn Sleep includes all our insider coaching strategies, taking you step by step, troubleshooting along the way, as well as